it saves them a ton of time.
Absolutely.
And then we also have meetup groups. Anybody that has like one person buy or spends your time target, and then it's naturally sort of
Okay. Okay.
But then how
Came back for you now.
I can see the other day.
so it's success based, right? So
This is
they
our-
are compensated when
I know, right?
so restaurants that offer tend to actually be less costly for them. Cost of the restaurant is so because of that, it's going to offer that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And so, do you have a target?
This is the restaurant now.
Yeah, 3,000 locations now.
Hey, how you doing, Steve?
So 3,000 around the country. We're in most major cities. We have about 500 startups.
Oh, wow.
How about you?
So I do large system implementations. Not nearly as
Federal.
Good portion. Yeah. Yeah, it can be.
95.
Oh, yeah. Well, I came from you.
Yeah. They offered me a job.
I should just not ask. No, it'd be no change. It was different parking.
And so finally I got hired. And I stuck with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they throw buildings up.
And for now I'm going to.
How big are you guys?
So influence, it's 40,000.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
Yeah, so but worldwide. They do development overseas. Which does the federal
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, people can
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
and then I got recruited over to So good to leave. I did that.
Yeah.
Checked it out. Moving on.
Yeah.
Following.
Doesn't know where you can. I'll defer my time. I'm Terry.
That may be you.
Cool.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Let it go.
What do you
I know, right?
Hi, how are you? I'm Patrick Solomon. How are you? That's good. How are you? Thanks so much for coming. Sure, many of you are working on government contract here in end of September. Yep. Really haven't got it figured out by now.
Well, they're crazy.
Hi, how are you? I'm Patrick Solomon. It's a good time. Thanks so much. All the time. Especially. Hopefully, if they're alive. Thanks again. Oh, thank you. Exactly. Yep.
Lead the way to sitting down.
Right. Just exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
I'm still sure.
Learning momentum dynamics. Constant push and pull for momentum knowledge. I'm sure you're the pull side, but I'm seeing on the other end. Yeah, that's pretty good. Doing product not direct yet. She kind of a parallel within St. View. So my manager is the project. John, the play just recently came over to the HM account for John. His departure was actually
So Stephanie Mango is the one that runs for BU. I don't know if I mentioned her.
Oh, no, I see. I know stuff.
Oh, yeah, Stephanie.
Then I see that she's on medical leave.
You're broken.
Oh, no.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Actually on the environmental side. So that's definitely federal and EPA county and along with commercial and state entries. So a lot, fortunately.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's sometimes where you need to go do deployments and there's going to be travel on it. A lot of the work is local.
That's, yeah. That's,
Yeah. Whatever 15 years I'm going to go for.
no, that's great.
Up to cash.
What's that?
So I can't believe how many people there.
So we're missing one more.
Branch members.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's a nice big crowd. I like to see that. My name is Carrie Willigan. I'm the Director of Career Services for the School of Business. I'd like to welcome you to Ask the Professional ISOM panel. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Dean Patrick Soleimani. He's going to talk to you for a few minutes, and then we're going to turn it over. We have a wonderful panel. And keep in mind, they're not here to talk to me. They're here to talk to you. So ask questions and make sure you take advantage of their generosity. So I'll turn it over to Assistant Dean Soleimani.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you? Wonderful. What a nice crowd. You know, there are not many opportunities to be able to get in front of people from industry and be able to have an understanding of what they're up to and to ask some questions about industry that you may be quite fascinated with. This is going to be one of those opportunities. So are any of you right now working in industry? So a few of you. So many of you are not working in industry. This is going to be a perfect preview about what to expect. I mean, you're going through all the academic motions here, but you're aspiring to be here at some point. And so I wanted to thank you for coming out here and having the ambition to have this dialogue. And very importantly, I wanted to thank our guests who are here today from all over industry and taking the time out of a very busy schedule to be able to speak with you, being the next generation of folks in the information systems operations management realm. So speaking of information systems operations management, your moderator for today's panel discussion is Professor Abhi Dutt. Abhi is a professor who focuses on information systems. He's an assistant professor in our information systems operations management area. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Professor Dutt, and I hope you all have a very informative and productive discussion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. All right. So as you heard that, my name is Abhi Dutt. I will be the moderator of this panel. So what that means is that when, I will probably ask some questions but I will look to you to ask most of the questions. Some of the stuff you want to know, that, what you will feel when you go and, get your first job, and how to become successful in your first job, what steps you can take, those things. So as we are discussing, think about the questions you are going to ask to the panel. So at first, I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves, and I start from this side.
Hi, everybody. Steve Zackwitz with CGI Federal. I've been in the IT consulting industry for about 16 years now and counting. Currently, I'm working on a project with the Department of Homeland Security focused on credential management and cybersecurity.
Hi, I'm Kara Streb. I actually graduated from George Mason. I was in the first MIS back in the day, Management Information Systems class. And I started working for AMS, which eventually became CGI. Worked with KPMG and with Kearney. In my career, we have done large system implementations for the federal government, including the intelligence community, DoD, and federal civilian. I'm on the application side, so I'm functional, where we do requirements, design, everything but the actual coding. So we'll also do the testing, hotline, through the life cycle. So it's very applicable to, I think, where the classes you are. So would entertain any questions on how to apply what you're doing to what our jobs are.
Hi, I'm Terry Williams, and I'm an IT senior manager with Kearney & Company. I've worked in the IT audit field for about 14 years. And I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out, thank the faculty and staff for putting on this event.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ansar Chaudhry. I'm a managing director with KPMG. I also went to George Mason here. I graduated in decision sciences and management information systems is what it used to be called. I understand a lot of people in the room here are required to be here, so hopefully those that are required to be here are going to get something out of this discussion. Back when I was here, I got my first job out of career services, so I owe a lot to George Mason here and getting my first job, which in turn really kind of jump-started my career going forward. Currently, I work with the DoD space, helping the Navy with their audit readiness activities, which means a lot of different things, and I'll get into that if anybody wants to talk about that afterwards.
Cool. I'm Tim Keogh. I'm a multi-time founder of tech companies, not as big as these guys. Every one of their companies is a lot bigger than mine. But graduated in 95 with a BS in finance, actually, and I've quickly went into the startup world, entrepreneurial world, and built and sold 4 or 5 different companies now, and I'm running 2. I'm happy to share any thoughts I have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. We'll close it.
Can you hear us in the back?
Can you hear us?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you very much to the panelists for their introduction. As you all know, that I'm an assistant professor of information systems and operation management here at George Mason. So in order to get started, I would probably like to ask the panelists the first question, that when we think about the information systems and operation management major, so, and some of you are our alumni, so it will be very easy for you also. So what kind of job do you think that it could be a good first job for them? Maybe one by one, if you can take turns. That what could be a first job for an ISOM major?
So in our company, at all the companies I've worked with, so if you're on the functional side, you come in as a business system analyst. So, and when you first start, basically we would probably start in doing hotline and answering questions as you get to know the product. And then as you understand the product more, you might be getting into training and design. But most important is to come in and get to understand the product. And you do that both by training and also by the hands-on work of getting, if you have to talk about the product, you have to get to know the product. So that's generally, if you're on the technical side, you would come in as a developer. And that way you'd be doing a lot of the coding, both from a base code as well as from writing reports.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, and certainly it sounds like you're talking about a very product-focused organization or alignment. And so I think that in the IT consulting space, you have focus on product and solutions that we sell to customers. You've got focus on implementation and delivery of those solutions to multiple customers. And then you've got, call it pure consulting or subject matter expertise type of activities, maybe in the course of providing outsourcing services or providing maintenance or management services. And so I think similarly, though, you've got two basic or general tracks that you take coming out of school. You've got technical or functional. On the technical side, it could be development, implementation, management, maintenance of those systems. And on the functional side, it's a lot of business analysis, requirements analysis, testing, verification, quality assurance, those types of roles to, like you're saying, get familiarity with the customer you're serving, with the services you're providing, the products you're dealing with. And I think that expertise and that knowledge is ultimately what's really valuable going on.
So one area I'd like to chime in on is data analytics and data in general. Like that is in all of my companies. Had we had the tool set we have now to analyze the data sets that we were working with for millions of financial transactions or what have you for Citigroup or AIG or whomever it is. And in my current space, I do a lot of stuff with restaurants and bars actually. And we have 3,000 customers around the U.S., and they all behave differently and interact differently with our customers. We kind of match them up through a reverse auction. And so we're applying data analytics to give you as a customer a better deal from a restaurant that makes sense between the both of you. And in every industry, data analytics is going to be more important than ever to make decisions, to figure out where you're going. And I feel that's something that is right up the alley for ISOM folks.
I'd agree with Tim. So with Kearney, we're looking in federal space for opportunities to expand and use IT resources as the federal government needs them. And just with the same with industry, we've got a growing data analytics practice. But who is familiar with IT audit? Okay, just a couple of people. So what we do in the federal space is really review and assess and give basically a grade for each government agency as to their IT security or their IT support of their financial system. So there's a lot of analytics, but we also do consulting. So there's a broad opportunity that. Basically, Kearney is going to try to serve the federal government in that way. So,
yeah, and I would just pile on to that. You either take a risk analyst track or you're taking a consulting track. It depends if you're an independent assessor of systems or technology, or you're providing support services to help them get their systems to whatever state of readiness in terms of a control environment that you need to get to. As an associate within KPMG, there are just so many service lines that you can be a part of, and then ISOM lends itself to either risk and analysts, consulting, and then data analytics, absolutely. So it would just depend on what you're more aligned with, what you want to learn about, and then whether or not it's specific functionally for a specific, I would say, solution, whether it's Oracle-based, SAP-based, or you want to get out there and try to figure out a number of different technologies and kind of work around that from that perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. So anybody else wants to ask a question? Like I asked you to think about it a little bit.
What type of education do you require for these jobs? Bachelor's degree?
Sure, absolutely. I can talk about myself. I just have a bachelor's degree. I do have certifications in Certified Information Systems Auditor, a CISP, a lot of PMP type of certifications. But at this point in my career, it's been just a bachelor's degree from George Mason, which I guess goes a long way, maybe. So.
And specifically to the entry-level positions we're talking about, I think, certainly at CGI Federal, it's bachelor's degrees and, science or related fields. And so, sorry, I didn't go to George Mason, so the acronym wasn't familiar to me. I'm ashamed to admit it, but my son.
In this field, or will you take other degrees?
So it's pretty widely varied, actually. I mean, I've seen hires for history majors, English majors. Clearly, IT backgrounds or systems-related backgrounds tend to funnel to the top more so than others. But I think particularly on the business analysis side, I think it's critical thinking skills. It's the ability to communicate effectively in front of clients. Good writing skills. There are a lot of soft skills that play into being a good consultant fundamentally, while having the foundation of knowing the subject matter you're talking about.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. So for ISOM graduates, I mean, as you're looking for new grads out of college, what is the level of technical experience you kind of expect out of a ISOM major in terms of Java programming or SQL Server?
So a lot of it. So from a product perspective, it's Java, SQL. Some of our products are still written in COBOL, so if you know Java, you can probably translate that into COBOL. And like you were saying, it's the analytical skills that are most important. And over the years of recruiting from college, that's the one I think you need to build on, as well as going out of the technical, but a lot of technical people need to write. So to be able to write a technical document in a way that somebody who's functional can understand it, so your customer can understand it. I think all of us have to write almost on a daily basis. So that's also, I would round out your education with some kind of writing.
Definitely critical thinking. I always think of negotiations as a class that, within a class, you have to understand what the other person's point of view is, and what they're looking for out of it, opportunity. So that works on your client, understanding, what is the client trying to get from our company, but it also works within your own team. What does my manager want in this instance? Probably to be able to go home early and find more time. So. That's another key skill is just understanding what other people want and communicating, so you guys reach a agreeable compromising.
Right. I'll add a little bit to this. For my kind of one of the work streams that I have, I look for individuals that have background in Windows operating system, an understanding of Unix or mainframe. And it's not necessarily that your career will be based on that type of technology going forward, but if you take the time to understand those types of technologies or one of them, it helps you understand that you want to go forward and learn, because what you start out with is not where you're going to be in 5 years, 10 years. It keeps changing. And so what you want to do is make sure that you understand what it takes to actually learn a technology, being able to apply it, and being able to be an analyst in that field, and then move forward, because technology is going to keep changing and moving forward. And so that, when I see resumes that have something and they have, a qualification in it or some understanding, it shows a lot. So I think that's beneficial.
Yeah, from my perspective, we're looking at sort of a different realm because I'm not consulting with anybody. We're not putting people on job sites or whatever, working on products. We're supporting a product we built and we manage. So we're looking for technical experience and kind of more modern stuff like Node or Amazon stuff, Lambda, whatnot. So very kind of specific technologies. But then I would say more broadly that I think there's a convergence of skill sets that are going on in all roles. Like no matter what you are, a more technology capability or understanding is going to benefit you. And not to say everybody needs to program and everybody needs to know how to write a JavaScript or something. But the more you can understand that, the more that you can communicate across boundaries within your organization. And communication is critical in terms of success, no matter what. So if you're building a product or supporting a product and you're a BA on it, a business analyst, being able to speak with the people that are implementing it and understand what they're saying and be able to convey that out, you're going to have some technical depth.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Chambers from Eagle Bank, and he just came in. But I'd like to welcome you, and if you would like to say a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Brian Chambers. IT Network System Manager for Eagle Bank. Been with the company about 3 years. Prior to that, I was managing another bank in Baltimore about 14 years. So been in the IT field for about 25 years, mostly in the banking arena.
Thank you. Welcome.
I was just going to ask, is an IT background necessary for what you guys do, or can you possibly learn that through training? Because this is not my major, but I'm still interested.
So I'd say there's probably two things in it sense of the question as well. There's what does a resume look like to get in the door, and then there's how do you apply those skill sets once you're in the door to the career and where it goes, right? So, I mean, I'll speak for myself and what we look through on the recruiting front, and I'm sure others have other perspectives, but I think some of those, buzzwords or skill sets around, experience with technologies or even classroom-based experience on, operating systems, word processing systems, and then things like JavaScript, databases, et cetera. Those get attention when it's, recruiting and looking for applicable skill sets in the workforce, right? So I think to the extent that, you don't have that background, you can also get it through training or, sort of even, I know there's a lot of self-paced training courses and web-based training courses out there that can be applicable to certain technologies and skill sets. The trick is figuring out what you actually want to focus on, because you could drive yourself crazy looking at those for the next 10 years. But I think once you get in the door, then it's really about adaptability, as some of the folks are saying, and understanding kind of the specific role and the requirements and the solutions, and just making the most with it. Because at least for myself, I don't think we, certainly not to diminish what's learned in a college education, because I value what I learned quite a bit, but we expect that there is a bit of a gap between, academic learning and sort of the practical application of that in the workforce. And that's something that comes with time. So we're really looking for people that can, make that leap, make that transition, and be successful at it.
One of the other ways that, especially at Mason, what I took advantage of was a co-op. So I actually started it here as a math major, went to computer science, and finally found my home in MIS. And so it was a rough start, to say the least. But because I knew my grade point average wasn't going to be all that great, I had to supplement it with something else, and so I co-opted. And so that's what got me in the door for the company that I eventually worked at.
What does co-op mean?
It's like an internship that you get paid at.
Oh, internship.
Yeah,
So
but
it's work.
it's work, yeah. So it took me 5 years to get through school, and I took 6 months off to work. Came back for 6 months, so some of that was summer classes, a lot of night classes. Went back for 6 months. For me, that was a very valuable program that was offered at the time through the career service.
Yeah, we do offer that internship now, and we really encourage students to get the internship. So that's one of the things we all do, and that's career services. People can talk about that. So I think there is a question. Go ahead.
Actually, Carrie, you mentioned testing and quality assurance. Can you give a concrete example of doing that for a product from a business standpoint?
Yeah. So when you are, for example, if you want the product to do something, so to keep it very simple, if you want the vendor name or a person's name, employee name, to be Kara, middle name Joe, last name Streb. The testing behind it has to be both positive. Yes, it's characters. There's no numeric name, and it's against a table, so it can find that. And then negative testing, where you put in garbage and it rejects it. So you test the requirement, the set of what you want the system to do. At the end of your implementation, you're testing to make sure it actually does that, both in a positive way and in a negative way. And every implementation has a testing phase. So from a data quality perspective, you're also making sure that the data is cleansed, so that a lot of time I do financial systems, and so you want to make sure, in the case of the general ledger has data that's applicable to that general ledger. And I was not an accounting major, and I had to learn a lot of accounting after I graduated.
Anybody else?
So do you do a lot of work on Excel then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's either through Access databases, where we do validation, but I think everybody validates differently, and especially as there's been more of the ability to deal with larger data. But when I was doing it, so I oversee programs now. I'm not actually in the execution, but during that time, I did Excel or Access databases.
This one's directed for Mr. Tim Q. In the formation of your businesses, did you find capital to be a barrier to entry? Did you need venture capital, or did you do it organically with your own money?
Good question. I've done it every which way. So I've done it where we've raised a fair amount of money, like $50 million, from folks like Citigroup and AIG and big VCs, and we ended up selling that company to Citigroup. But so at the end of the day, I think, and I've also started them up and bootstrapped it entirely and then sold the company. At the end of the day, I think the real crux of it is, are you building something and delivering value in a way that is sustainable, right? So if I can build something and I know I have a path towards building this business, if I do it as a bootstrap model, right, I am on a path that is going to be successful. I can raise money when I choose to accelerate, if, presuming I'm able to hit my targets, and I'm presuming I'm also able to see eye to eye with my prospective investors. So I think it really changes. It really differs. It also differs based on industry and product that you're doing. Some industries you can find financing earlier, right? So venture capital early. If you have access to folks that are high net worth individuals, angels, that type of thing, it can change things. And certainly depending on geography, like DC is a horrible place to raise venture capital. Terrible terms. They behave like banks, but not very good banks. So it's not a really great place to raise a lot of money. And so, but in California, in the Valley, you can raise a lot of money with very favorable terms comparatively. And so it really depends. And certainly, industries and products come and go in sort of the sweet spot of VC investors, where they're looking at a certain thing that's hot, and then that may fade and you're not hot anymore. And so that's why I always think, if I'm building a business that can be sustainable long-term on its own, even though I may not grow like this because I didn't infuse capital, I'm going to have a business that's going to work, and it'll come out in the end. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Yes.
What do you guys believe the ISOM curriculum does not provide that if you could have taken in the past would be really beneficial to what you're doing now?
I'm sorry, does not provide?
Yeah.
What do you wish you knew coming out of school?
I've been out for a little too long to, I guess, reread the current curriculum. But
okay, let me rephrase the question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Did I feel prepared? For the most part, because I did some of the things that were recommending for you now. I took some classes that made me do an internship. I did work in teams that made me focus on my leadership skills, focus on how I followed people who were leading, or how I connected with the team, how I was motivating people. So, every place where you go, you're not going to, even now in any audit, any new project that I embark upon, I don't know every bit about the technology. I'm going to have to get up to speed. I'm going to have to get understanding of how this agency is using it as opposed to how I've seen it in other places if I've seen it before. So,
Let me ask that question maybe a little differently.
Okay.
I think that will probably be easier. That when you are seeing that that the students are coming as their first job, is there anything that has come out to you as a new person who's starting that I wish they knew this when they came in?
Yeah. So I did a lot of college recruiting at the job that I had left at CACI. And we would bring in a group of students, sometimes 5 to 7 people, new graduates. And one of the gaps that they had was real strong analytical skills, applying the school in the analytical, like here's the data and you have to do something without being told exactly what to do. So a lot of times people, at least in our careers, a problem is given to you without a way to come up with the solution. And so you have to develop that story. So that's one gap. And the other gap that I have found, and I'm currently kind of working through, is really being able to write that in words. So in my career, we do implementations. We're writing an implementation plan, and people are struggling to write the holistic story. So what is the story? What are we trying to accomplish? So those are the two gaps. Technically, I found that the students coming out of the local universities really could jump into it pretty quickly, probably faster than anybody else, that have been in their career longer. One of the things that you can always apply is you guys know technology better than most of the people. So the median age in a lot of our careers are probably in the 30s, 40s. And so Excel and PowerPoint and, Microsoft Project and all those, that's so natural to you that you can add value right away. So where there's a gap, you guys have a strength. And you just have to marry that across, your team, as you were talking about.
And build on that, I think in terms of what I wish I knew. So I came out of school as a software developer and was writing code and building widgets before moving on. But I think it was really the intercomplexities of the solutions that I was working on relative to what I was familiar with from school, right? So back when I was in school, I was building a Visual Basic calculator app and, watching it add up and everything worked, and it was in isolation, it was fine. But I think getting into the work environment, both from, the technologies I was working with, the impacts of doing something in one area on a completely unrelated area over there, and just the complexity of the solutions we were building was something that took a while to appreciate, and maybe I thought I knew more than I did starting out, to be honest. I think also, particularly in the federal space, just the technology, I think, is continuing to meld into areas of specialization, whether it's web interfaces or data analytics or artificial intelligence, machine learning, and in reality, working with some of these large agencies, large organizations, they've got a wide range of really, really old, archaic stuff, and they want to use the newest and the best. But it's figuring out how to make that work together and not being able to rip everything out and build it over again that just adds to the complexity of what we're trying to do.
I think from my perspective, it was the curriculum I had here. I learned a lot from the team, I guess, environments and the team projects, but I didn't really know how what I was doing would apply into the real world. So we'd start doing these larger projects on these businesses and have business cases and presentations on it. But I couldn't take that and figure out how is that going to help me in my future career. What I would have, and I should have done, is spent some time thinking about what I'm learning in the curriculum here and try to apply that to what are the businesses that are out there that are probably the businesses that I want to work for, understand what do they really do for their business. Because when I was coming out, I would just state, I think I'm going to get a consulting job. Well, I don't even know what that means right now when I say it. And so I would say it all the time, and I would say I'm going to be a consultant. And so that really didn't make a lot of sense. And now that I'm in that field, I could have understood what all the companies are out there that are the large companies and really look at their service lines and look at what they're actually doing and then find out how does that business actually make money? How do they get contracts? How do they make money? And then I can understand why from A to Z, how I'm going to be helping. And so when you come out and get your first job, what you want to learn as fast as possible is, why am I doing what I'm doing, and how did I get to this point, and where do we need to get to at the end of this, and how can I make it grow? And so that would have been beneficial. I had to do that on my own time. I think probably George Mason does a better job of probably applying, but anything that you're doing in the classroom, try to figure out how does it apply for a career going forward, and I think that would be helpful for anybody here.
One of the things I was going to add to because we do a lot of like infrastructure projects and data centers and things of that nature, and oftentimes we see where the technology learned is more in silos. So they'll probably teach what routers are and switches, but to sort of put it together is probably where I see there is some sort of a deficiency there. It's not a great one because if you have the fundamentals, you can actually overcome those obstacles. But it's just keeping abreast with the change in technology, and there's a lot of acronyms that are used that you just need to be familiar with that. I would strongly recommend that you keep reading, keep on top of what you learn in school, is just to keep looking at the different technologies and what's changing in the environment. So.
Where do you see the industry moving in the next 5 years?
What industry? Yeah. The industry. The entire industry. I can start in a lot of the work that we're doing right now. Everything's moving towards intelligent automation and digital labor. So you guys are going to be the first group that has to battle not only trying to get a job, but losing it to automation. And so a lot of what we do at KPMG, even though we're an auditing firm, even our audits that we perform are being automated. And so we are trying to get ahead of a lot of that and trying to figure out how we can help our clients. Budgets are going down in the federal space, the space I work in right now, and then requirements are going up and responsibilities are going up. So they're trying to automate as much as possible. So for me, that's what it's going to be, intelligent automation.
I agree with that. In fact, in the implementation we're talking about, we're trying to automate every single piece of it, including all the testing. And we're moving to the cloud. So that's, and then also the government is moving toward shared service, where selected organizations will service the rest of the government. And in the end, that will save us as taxpayers a lot of money. It's a painful process to get there.
Yeah, your mention of cloud is another key area when you look at the federal space of, there's hundreds of thousands of machines and servers that cost lots and lots of money to keep online and operational, and there's a huge push to move all of that into cloud environments, which, it's like utility. You pay your monthly bill based on what you use, and that's all you need. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that, but the concept is that, there's significant cost efficiencies and savings in moving in these cloud-based environments, and there's a lot of taxpayer money being spent to do that right now. And so I think that understanding those architectures, those environments, and the pros and cons of doing it is key to understanding where we're going. And that's just one aspect of the industry to your question. But
I could probably add another area too. Security is a big focus. Actually, there is a shortage of security professionals. We all read in the paper surrounding different hacks and breaches that have been taking place. Not only just to be in the realm of security, but understand how bad actors keep on changing the way how they attack systems. So that's just going to continue with just the boom of the internet. It's an open architecture, so there's a lot of holes and gaps there that can be taken advantage of. So it's understanding that will be an area that it doesn't matter what company you own, more so because we're a bank, we probably pay a lot of attention to it, but it doesn't matter what technology.
I appreciate that.
Doesn't matter what sector you're in or what you're if you're in the software or development, that is a great concern.
Yeah, for federal government, I do a lot of the FISMA audits, which are annual audits of the IT security programs for these agencies. And within that, they've already moved to adopting more business-aligned frameworks to sort of help with information sharing about these types of threats, and I see that continuing going forward. Along with that, they're trying to do more on identifying performance metrics that can be comparable across agencies. So one agency can say, I'm in the top 10% of my peer group for, protecting my information security for my program.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add is that it's sort of a confluence of all of these things that everybody's mentioned are moving into every role that's going on in the organization. So you need to be cognizant of security, of how technology works, of how these things interact. You need to be more innovative and think about things in different ways and really critically think about how my role affects the business, how my role affects my group, my job, my function, because automation is coming. Like, we use automation for things that we wouldn't have used before. I would have employed 20 people, and I don't employ those people, because we've written software to do it. And so that's coming, and so how do you differentiate yourself in that type of world? It's by understanding broader than just my specific, I type numbers in a spreadsheet, and I know how security impacts it. I know how these things come together, and I'm thinking about my job, of how I can make it better, how I can make my business better, the overall business.
So I just want to revisit, like we talked a little bit about the gaps, like the new hires are kind of, So I think we saw strong analytical skills. That's one was told, and then, when you have data, what to do with data, and then also writing skills. Is there anything else you have to add? You would like to add?
Communication. So going to events like this, talking to people, networking, all of those things are very valuable when you go in and meet somebody when you're looking for a job. Right? One of the biggest turnoffs for me, it doesn't matter how awesome you are at whatever your function is if I can't have a conversation with you. Like, that's a problem. I'm probably not going to hire you. And it's just a fact, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I need people on the team that are going to be able to converse with everybody else, that are going to be able to operate together, that are going to have the people want to be around. And so that, like, interpersonal skill is very valuable, and it helps the team be more performant.
And to that point, I mean, in the consulting space, what I had to learn was, everybody's in sales, right? We exist, we get paychecks because, we are serving other people and we're providing value to them, right? So it was that, something that I didn't like to think about early on in my career, but just embracing the fact that, look, we're a representation of our company, and we want to represent ourselves well so that more people want to work with us and that we can grow and we can all prosper as a result.
And just to that point, when you're out interviewing, what are you selling? You're selling you, right? And so you need to be positive about it, be very, kind of energetic and whatnot.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would state that every resume that I get, if you can apply what you've written and not have that, I mean, you can have your resume, but if you have what's written down in your resume and you can talk to those items and how that applies to the person you're interviewing with and the job field they're a part of, then you can have a conversation about how you would fit in appropriately. If you just go in there talking about what classes you've got, some internships, things like that, when you haven't differentiated yourself from the next person. So if the next person that shows up can tell me that, oh, I'm studying for a certified information systems auditor. I understand that you're in the field of, you might be I'm actually interviewing for a federal position. I understand the federal government's going through these issues right now, and this is how I think I can help, and this is how my background and understanding from my curriculum can help. That makes it a conversation then, or else we're just talking about the next person coming in. If I can see you as part of the team because of something that I have right now, then it would be more easy for you to get your first job, I think.
I was just gonna ask first, how many of you guys have actually conducted an interview?
Not all of us have.
All of us. Okay, so you were talking about the resume and obviously doing your research on the business, and probably you find out who's interviewing you then too as well, so you can, like you said, have an actual conversation.
Right.
So I guess my other question is like I said, this is not my major, but if I were coming in for an interview and I did have all the experience, and let's say I did an internship, and I'm the type of person who learns on the job, and I'm a hands-on type person. And so if my resume was not necessarily towards what the actual job was, but I still present myself well, and I still obviously, and I show you that I'd be able to work for a company, and I'd be able to pick up things very easily, I'm an easy learner.
Right.
How would that be viewed in your eyes?
Sure, absolutely. It goes down a couple different paths. When we go and find individuals that are coming out of college, you have to meet specific requirements, but your major, your, I guess, GPA before you ever get into the room, right? And so that's one path. And so if you fit outside of that path, then you would have to kind of network and try to determine from the recruiters when you can get in front of that individual to interview you, because it wouldn't be at the normal kind of activities that happen here at Career Services. What I can tell you for the team that I have, there are a number of individuals that don't have, I guess, majors in the career field that they're working in right now. And so even if it's biology, history, whatever the case might be, if they have work-related experience or internships that have or are exhibiting that they are studying for something in the field or have passed a test in the field that we work in, then that holds a lot of weight also to get your foot in the door and get a job. So that's the thing. You'd have to do your homework and try to determine, okay, here's my major, but here's what I know about the company that I would like to work for and I'm interviewing for. And these are things that can show that just because I don't have that major, I'm not a little bit behind from the folks that might have gained that experience here.
And to that point, write your resume to tailor to the company you're applying to. Right? So you don't just have to have one resume. Find out the job and make it look like you're a perfect fit for that job, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because I know, like, necessarily, like, you can get your major in something, you can have a job completely different.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Absolutely.
quite frequent.
It is.
I also think it's important that when you with some of the newer students, you have to dress for the interview. So it's as important to articulate yourself, but you never have a second chance to make a first impression. So when you walk through the door, if your competition is wearing a suit or dressed for the occasion, you want to be at least equal in that part.
Right. You would think that's common.
Step one.
Right, step one.
And it's not.
It's not. Right. How good the resume looks. Is it professional looking? The way you dress. The biggest thing for me is when I get into an interview, it has to be very, it has to progress. If I'm asking more questions and I have one answer responses, if the conversation isn't you talking more than I'm talking, that's an indication that the interview is not going too well. So just keep in mind that you want to take charge of the interview. You're trying to sell yourself, essentially, and show if more than anything, not necessarily, do you have the requisite expertise, but essentially, can you work well and be a part of this team and be an individual that has a sense of urgency because you took the time to have a sense of urgency in this interview and prepare for it. So will you do that in your job?
So I can't count the number of times we've interviewed people that have come in and not actually took the time to actually research what we do. Mm-hmm. Didn't even think of any questions. If you can't ask one single question in an interview, that's a big red flag. Right? That means you haven't put any thought into what this role means. Am I really interested in this? I just want a job is what I hear. Mm-hmm. And so I'm much more of a fan of people that are passionate about something, right? I've hired some of the best developers that had English degrees, and just they were passionate about building software. They just happened to pursue English as their degree. And they're some of the best guys that I've ever hired. And so I think it's more of, he demonstrated when he came in, I was doing all this on the side. Hey, you must like it, right? And then I came in and talked about why, like what he thought and what he thought about our application, and how we could fix it, how we can make it better. Like those are interesting questions, and it shows to me you did some homework. That really you're not in here just to try and like hopefully I just hand out a job to you. It's more of like you really have thought about it and really want to interact.
Maybe could we get somebody from the back? I have not heard anything. Anybody else? And I'll get you.
Well, I think one of the things that we said over here was making sure that you just don't have one resume, but that you tailor your resume to the position. So depending on whether it's for an auditing position or, what I think Tim is talking about, that's a whole different field than what I do. So take your resume and gear it towards what his requirements are for his position. And you can just by rewording and in our my company for certain positions you want to show success, so 20% growth, something like that's very important. That may not be important for an accounting degree. So really looking at what they're asking for and tailoring it to that.
Yeah, we said a few times here, just thinking of yourself as a salesperson. That I like sort of thinking of yourself as a brand. what differentiates you from your peers? Can you show from internships? Can you show from, I had an interesting interview with a person who was I believe, history major, and he worked in interpretation because he knew a few different languages, but he ended up coming to IT because he had to work in this program that was sort of slow, so he taught himself how to fix it. Just being a person who's got an open mind and thinks through, critical problems. How can I solve that?
And I think it speaks to the other topic too of networking, right? Which is either the people that you may know that work at a company. Use a tool like LinkedIn and do a little recon. As long as it doesn't get too creepy, you can learn a lot about maybe who the recruiter is that you're talking to and what department do they work with and what jobs you're applying for and get a feel for that. And I think that at least the way that it works within CGI Federal and I'm sure some of the other large companies is your resume, you either apply to a specific position or coming out of college you may have a general application for roles that may be a fit for a college recruiting class in the organization. That goes through an initial filtering process, looking at background, GPA, skill sets, et cetera. And then those are, divvied out, for lack of a better term, to groups and areas that have openings, have roles, have needs, saying, hey, this might be a good fit for you, it might be a good fit for you. So in that process, realize that your resume is first, being looked over by HR, and then it's potentially being looked over by, somebody that's going to be a manager, going to be responsible for that role that you would be entering into, and then it's being looked over by the individuals that you're going to interview with. And so at each one of those sets of eyeballs and each one of those steps in the process, if you can figure out who that is or what the group is or whatnot, you have an opportunity to kind of influence the decision.
And tenacity. So I wanted to work at a particular company coming out of college. I interviewed 15 times with them. I just kept putting in my resume. And back then there weren't databases of resumes, so I interviewed with 15 different people, and they finally got me in a room, and they're like, wow, I think I've seen you before. Give me a job, finally. And I stayed there for 29 years.
Right. Just to add, I mean, it's difficult trying to get your resume. I mean, you're competing against each other, basically, for the same type of jobs that are out there. So you do have to differentiate yourself. So it is difficult. The recruiters that go out there try their best to try to figure out what are the requirements for even a company like ourselves with multiple openings, what makes sense, what fits, and how many folks do we need, and then that's how the interview process gets set up. So you may not make that cut here, but if you have that tenacity and keep working towards it and keep sending those resumes in, keeping those contacts going, you'll be outside of that process. And what will happen is that openings come and go all the time. And so that fit has to happen and the timing has to be right, and you might be able to get that interview and have that job where you're not necessarily competing against anybody. But for your resume specifically, you have to have whatever you have written down right now has to be results-oriented. So you can state, oh, I did this great thing. You have to tell why it mattered. And so I think that's something that folks miss. And if you put in what did it save, what did it do, what's a number, what did that result in, that'd be really beneficial because then they can read through and say, okay, so-and-so did this, and this is why it mattered. And I think that's important to stand out also.
I'll just reiterate on the like LinkedIn type contact. Most successful hires or many successful hires are based because somebody brought you in, can vouch for you. It's a lot easier to say, and sort of knows the person, and he referred them to me. Well, I'm going to give that person more benefit of the doubt or more of a scrutinized look. And there is, I think, a temptation nowadays. You guys all probably use this. I don't, but. Automated systems where I fill out my thing and I hit a button and I apply to 10 jobs, like that becomes noise. It's easy to apply. So therefore applications have gone up. So it's harder to be discerned in that pile of applications. So you need to do things that are a little bit different. Like how many people write cover letters anymore? Mm-hmm. I don't get them. I think that's a way to differentiate. Right? It's like, why do I want this job? Why can I add value to? Why am I good? And you can concisely say that in something that's in front of somebody that hits the needs that you have. Like you're going to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, there was a resume that I received a couple of years ago, and it was somebody who came from Stevenson University outside of Baltimore. And in his cover letter, he said why being a lacrosse captain made a difference to him getting a job. And it was the same thing. I just was ready, and I'm like, okay, we're bringing this guy in. And he ended up doing a lot of research and getting a job. But It was the fact that he did make himself different. And it wasn't like it was something, it was a passion of his. And then talking about how that passion translated into leadership and how leadership translates into getting a job and applying himself at that kind of level. So, it caught our attention.
In each of your industries, which positions specifically are most threatened by automation, and to what extent is coding at risk of being automated?
Sure, I guess I'll start. I mean, every industry is going to be affected by automation. The biggest one that's going to be affected based on sheer numbers is transportation. So anybody that drives Uber or does trucking, things like that, that's going to be automated from specifically what we do here, a shared services model where there's activities that there's like 3 different classifications of intelligent automation. Something from cognitive, where Watson kind of thinks things through, and it's in the medical field, all the way down to just remedial automation, where somebody takes a task and they're doing the same task all day. They're reviewing a legal file. They're taking that one ID number, putting it in an email, and sending that off to somebody else, and that person puts that ID number into an application. Well, that's all going to be gone, and this is spending a lot of time and money in a number of industries with systems that don't interact with each other, and it's a cheaper way to do it, and those are the ones where you have a job that's called swivel chair, where you take something from one system, put it into another system, it can scrub all of that, and that'll be automated. So I'd say a lot of the shared services activities, things that have a process in place that's very basic, and that's why differentiating yourself and being more inclined to understand different technologies and being able to understand where the industry is going is going to be more important than just doing like data entry, things like that.
Yeah, I think specific to IT, the 2 that come to mind are testing QA, which is a big one, and also infrastructure management or some of the IT systems management, which with some of the cloud computing and automation capabilities there are certainly helping to drive that. But I mean, fundamentally, at least in the consulting space, those are the kind of innovations that we're looking to capitalize on and bring to market and bring to bear and help companies in the industry do better. And so fundamentally, if we can't embrace them, then shame on us. Right?
To your question about will coding be automated, to some degree it is already, right? You can find platforms right now that will build mobile apps that will deploy, and you don't write a single line of code, and it will do stuff. Now, will it do complex, algorithms and complex processing? No, but we're going to move in that direction, right? And so there is going to be automation across the board.
And I've seen less coding automation, but I think the coding abstraction is getting like these codeless platforms where it's not necessarily development, but you can build applications by dragging and dropping and doing some basic.
Yeah. But it's right. It's automating the
progression.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the companies I run, we built software that takes design files for building like a website. Right. I need to mock up what it looks like, and it digests all of that, rips out all the pieces of it that are important to a developer, and delivers it to them so they can use it immediately. And so that used to be somebody's job to create a specifications document that says, oh, the button goes here, and this is the color, and this is the. That job doesn't exist, or it shouldn't exist anymore. And so those are the types of things that are happening, and that's just one step in that process of going from design to development. And QA, obviously, there's tons of automation there with Selenium and everything else. I mean, so it's permeating into everything, every aspect, even in the building of software.
So there's platforms that can build an app on its own.
There are guys that are writing code to take a design and have it generate code out of that design.
So it just requires an input.
There is still an input, yeah. It's not complete, but I guarantee there are people working on giving it business functions, and it will create the UI and create a backend, like how to operate it.
Selenium is a QA program?
Selenium, yeah.
It's used across in my industry, it ties requirements all the way through testing, and it has the capability of writing documentation as well. So from an auditing perspective, so I'm an information system, so my team gets audited. I'm able to show from the beginning of the requirement all the way through development to testing to deployment the single thread, and then the documentation behind it. So it's been very helpful. Auditor comes in, you can just check the box, he or she.
And just to add on that, so it sounds scary, but this is a service line also, so helping clients understand how to automate their environment. And so there's a number of automation type companies out there, and so helping them understand processes, which you guys should understand more about the clients that you're serving, they build the bots, basically. And so what you would be doing is having a service type of industry that you might be interested in going forward, and that might be one of them.
I have a great question actually for the panel. That I always, when I teach my classes, I always emphasize that everybody should be a lifelong learner, right, in this field. So can you all talk a little bit about what they should be doing once they get a job, that they should be lifelong learner, and maybe how you have achieved that in your careers.
Sure, I'll start. I think one of the things that I do is I read a lot, as much as I can, and not only like business periodicals. I'll read the Wall Street Journal every day. I'll read a book every 2 weeks, whether it's it could be just entertainment books, or it could be like business books or other types of strategy things or what have you. I also try to immerse myself in technology. I know I'm not going to be the master of every technology, but I would like to know what it is and be able to think about how it operates and how it impacts business down the road, especially as I look strategically at my businesses. Like how are we going to continue to position ourselves and evolve? And the great thing is there's a wealth of resources out there nowadays that you can get this information anywhere to keep yourself continuously educated. So that's a lot of what I do, and the other things that I try to participate in is events where I'm networking with other folks, and which is good on every level. Whether you're starting your career or you're at the end of your career, the more you can go and converse with people that have different viewpoints, different thoughts, are working on different problems, you can learn an awful lot about various things that are going on in industry or in government or what have you.
Mm-hmm. And I do a lot through looking at people I want to emulate. And so for example, networking. Like 8 years ago, I really wanted to get in networking. There was a woman who was really good at it. So I just watched her, observed her, and tried to emulate it. And then I eventually asked her to be a mentor and realized that she was as afraid of networking as I was. And so she took the fear out of it for me. So I think reading, but also having mentors, and you don't have to have a mentor, but find people in your life you want to emulate, whether it's, a parent or it's somebody in the industry, and that person doesn't have to be your mentor for the rest of your life. There can be periodic mentors. I think that's also very important in the learning process.
That's great. I'd also add there are a lot of resources online, so you can right now go online and find out about federal laws that are coming up and how to audit them. If you wanted to come in,
don't everybody rush off at once.
I know, right?
It might be down right now.
Yeah, right. But I mean, if you were planning to interview with us and said, okay, well, I know that you say you've got a CISSP. Let me look at what that certification requires. There's so much available just for you to take a next step. So
I think you just touched on certifications, right? And so I think continuing education, certifications, some of those, for better or worse, are prerequisites to getting in the door with certain jobs and certain roles that the federal government in particular. And so going after looking at PMP, looking at CISSP, looking at some of these security-related certifications. They have a practical purpose. They allow networking. They, build up knowledge, and they keep you fresh, for lack of a better term.
Okay, we are coming to an end, so I will allow a last question. Go ahead.
My name is Seth, and listening to a lot of the questions and the answers, automation seems to come up a lot. Given the everyday improvements in AI technology and where we're headed, it seems like there's a lot of cynicism about automation, how it's going to move towards eliminating the actual staff and the software, as you guys mentioned. So what do you guys think will happen to starting level positions and a lot of things that a lot of the university graduates can start into maybe 10, 20 years from now, because from what it looks and a lot of the articles that come out, they have kind of this not very optimistic look about automation, because it's going to take away so many jobs, but I know at the same time it's going to create a lot of jobs.
Right. So to provide some context, you can find those same articles from the 1920s.
Yeah.
So this has been a topic over history, whether it's machine automation or human automation, driving, railroads. I mean, so it's not a unique concept, but it is very relevant, and I think the pace is scary to a lot of people, in today's society and particularly in the computer field. But I think when we started off talking, we were talking about skill sets. Tim, you mentioned data scientists, data analytics, and so I juxtaposed the everything's going to be automated perspective with the fact that these are skill sets we can't find enough people for. You mentioned cybersecurity and security awareness, right? So there is a wealth of opportunity out there in this space. You just got to be looking in the right places.
Yeah.
So I don't think the sky's falling yet.
Yeah, I will also just. I believe I read that the only U.S. Census announced job that has been eliminated is the elevator operator. So,
Chicago too, though.
Yeah. So maybe there's just so few they can't count them.
And just bear in mind too that the tools that are out there, it's written by someone. So even though it may shift, it's not really technically eliminated. So there's someone behind writing these automated tools that you're currently using. So.
Okay, I guess there is one more question, so let's do it briefly and then let's wrap it up.
Just a
Quick question.
just a short question. As a hiring manager, do you recommend better to get a certification before you graduate or get into an internship?
Internship. Practical experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can decide what you want to be certified in.
All right. So I would like to wrap up the panel, and I hope the students, you all got some valuable information. I learned something. I would like to thank each of the panelists for spending so much time here answering our questions. Now I know that a lot of you have a lot of you have probably more questions, and the panelists will be here. So please be around, and then start to
That's important. Yeah, that gets you out of the garage.
It's good. Yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Good meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
Where are you based out of?
Based out of Tyson's.
Tyson's.
Yeah, what about you?